My mother's gym buddy showed up at their funeral with 3 kids. The woman in the black dress wasn't crying. That's what I noticed first, not the 3 kids clutching her hands, not the way she kept staring at my mother's casket, but the complete absence of tears on her perfectly composed face. Everyone else in St. Mary's was a mess. Aunt Linda had gone through half a box of tissues, my cousin Jake kept clearing his throat every 30 seconds, and I'd given up on mascara entirely about an hour ago. But this woman, mid-40s, blonde highlights, the kind of athletic build that screamed expensive personal trainer, stood there like she was attending a business meeting. I leaned over to my cousin Sarah. Do you know who that is? The blonde with the kids. Sarah squinted across the funeral home. Never seen her before. Maybe someone from Mom's work. That didn't sit right with me. I knew all of Mom's co-workers from the accounting firm. 23 years there, and she dragged me to every Christmas party, every retirement send-off. This woman was a stranger. The funeral director started his closing remarks, something generic about eternal rest and loving memories. I tried to focus, but my eyes kept drifting back to the mystery family. The kids were maybe 8, 10, and 12, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest boy had this thick dark hair that reminded me of someone, though I couldn't place it. When we finally filed out for the burial, I made sure to position myself where I could see them clearly. That's when he appeared, Mike something or other. I recognized him immediately as Mom's gym buddy from the past few years. Average height, graying temples, one of those guys who wore workout clothes like a uniform even to a funeral. He walked straight to the blonde woman and put his arm around her shoulders. Not the casual comfort you'd give a friend, but the practiced intimacy of a couple. She leaned into him, and suddenly those 3 kids became his 3 kids. My stomach dropped. Mom had mentioned Mike exactly 12 times in the past 2 years. I knew because I'd started counting after the 3rd mention, some weird instinct telling me to pay attention. Mike says I should try that new spin class. Mike thinks I should switch to lighter weights. Mike's really helped me stay motivated during treatment. During the 18 months of chemo and radiation that had drained our savings account down to $847. During the nights Mom had stood at the kitchen counter, organizing pill bottles and medical bills into neat little stacks of financial ruin. During the weekend I'd driven her to 3 different pharmacies looking for the cheapest generic anti-nausea medication because our insurance had maxed out. Mike had been there through all of that. Supportive. Encouraging. Married, apparently. At the graveside, I watched him whisper something to the oldest boy, who nodded solemnly. The kid's profile hit me like a physical blow, the strong jawline, the deep-set eyes, even the way he stood with his shoulders slightly hunched forward. He looked exactly like my father had at that age. I'd seen the photos 1,000 times. The funeral director was talking about ashes to ashes, dust to dust, but all I could hear was the sound of my world reshaping itself around this terrible new possibility. I pulled out my phone and quickly Googled Mike Castellano Jim. The last name came back to me from one of Mom's casual mentions. The first result was a Facebook page. Mike Castellano, married to Jennifer, father of 3. The profile picture showed all 5 of them at some beach resort, everyone tanned and smiling. Posted 6 months ago. Right around the time Mom had started her final round of chemo. The reception at Aunt Linda's house was supposed to be a comfort. Casseroles and condolences, the familiar rhythm of grief shared among family. Instead, I sat in the corner clutching my phone, scrolling deeper into Mike Castellano's digital life like I was excavating evidence. His Instagram went back 4 years. 4 years of family vacations I could never afford, kids' soccer tournaments, date nights at restaurants where the appetizers cost more than our weekly grocery budget. Jennifer's account was even worse. She'd hashtagged their anniversary dinner last month with hashtag blessed and hashtag 15 years, posting a photo of a wine bottle that cost $180. I knew because I'd looked it up. 15 years. They'd been married 15 years. Honey, you need to eat something. Aunt Linda appeared with a paper plate loaded with sympathy food. Your mother would have wanted. Did Mom ever mention someone named Jennifer to you? I interrupted. Linda frowned. Jennifer? I don't think so. Why? What about Mike? Mike Castellano. Oh, Mike from the gym, sure. She talked about him helping her with her workouts. Seemed like a nice guy. She said he really understood what she was going through. Linda paused. Actually, now that I think about it, didn't she mention his wife was also dealing with some health issues? Cancer, I think. The plate nearly slipped from my hands. Cancer. Breast cancer, like your mom. That's why they connected so well at first. He understood the treatment schedule, the side effects. His wife had just finished chemo when your mother was starting. The casserole turned to ash in my mouth. I mumbled something about needing air and escaped to Linda's back porch. My fingers were shaking as I called Mom's gym. Riverside Fitness, this is Ashley. Hi, I'm calling about a member, Mike Castellano. My mother worked out with him, she passed away yesterday, and I wanted to let him know about memorial arrangements. Oh honey, I'm so sorry for your loss. But I think there might be some confusion. We don't have a Mike Castellano in our system. Can you describe him? I described him perfectly. Ashley put me on hold. Okay, so that sounds like Mike Torres. He's been a member for about 3 years. Really sweet guy, he's here almost every afternoon. Torres. Not Castellano. I thanked Ashley and hung up, my mind racing. Why would Mom call him by the wrong last name for 2 years? Unless she hadn't known his real name either. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk this is Jennifer. We need to talk, asterisk. I stared at the screen. Jennifer had somehow gotten my number. Jennifer, who'd been watching me at the funeral, who'd figured out exactly who I was while I was still putting together who she was. Another text, asterisk meet me at Riverside Fitness tomorrow at 2 p.m. Don't bring anyone, asterisk. A third message, this one with a photo attachment. It was a screenshot of a bank statement, not Mike's name on it, but my father's. David Chen, my father who died of a heart attack 8 months ago. A monthly automatic transfer of $3,200 to an account I'd never seen before. The transfer dated back 5 years. The final text came through as I was staring at Dad's signature on what looked like some kind of legal document. Asterisk, your father promised Mike half the house. We're not going anywhere. Asterisk. Inside, I could hear Aunt Linda asking if anyone had seen me. Cousin Sarah was laughing at some memory of Mom. The normal sounds of a family gathering to mourn and remember. But I wasn't part of a normal family anymore. I was part of something much more complicated, and I was starting to understand that my parents' marriage, my entire childhood, had been built on a lie that was now demanding payment. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that bank statement with Dad's name on it. $3,200 a month for 5 years. I did the math obsessively. $192,000. Nearly $200,000 that could have paid for Mom's treatments, could have kept us from refinancing the house twice, could have meant she didn't spend her final months choosing between medications and groceries. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wasn't meeting Jennifer alone. I called my cousin Jake at 7 a.m. He was Dad's nephew, the one person in our family who'd actually liked dealing with financial stuff. More importantly, he was the one who'd helped me sort through Dad's papers after the heart attack. Jesus, Mia, it's 7 in the morning. This better be. Jake, I need you to look at something. Remember Dad's filing cabinet, the locked drawer we couldn't find the key for? Yeah, we assumed it was just old tax returns. We need to break it open. Today. Before I meet with someone at 2. Jake was quiet for a long moment. What kind of trouble are we talking about here? The kind that involves Dad sending someone $3,200 a month for 5 years while Mom was rationing her pain pills. He was at my house by 8:30 with a crowbar. The locked drawer opened with a metallic screech that sounded like every secret Dad had ever kept. Inside were manila folders labeled with dates going back 15 years, each one thick with documents I'd never seen before. Jake whistled low. Your dad was thorough, I'll give him that. The first folder contained copies of every transfer to something called JT Holdings LLC. Jake traced his finger down the amounts. They'd started at $1,800 monthly, increased to $2,400 3 years ago, then jumped to $3,200 right around the time Mom's cancer came back. Look at this, Jake said, pulling out a handwritten letter dated 18 months ago. Dad's writing, addressed to Mike Torres. It says here he's sorry he can't increase the payments anymore because of medical expenses, but he promises Mike can have his rightful share of the house after both he and Mom are gone. His rightful share of what? It's our house. Dad bought it before I was born. Jake was already opening the second folder. Holy shit, Mia. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them, spanning years. Dad with those 3 kids at various ages, pushing the youngest on a playground swing, teaching the middle boy to ride a bike, sitting in bleachers at what looked like a school play with a girl. In every photo, he was smiling the same way he'd smiled in my childhood pictures. But there was more. Report cards with handwritten notes from Dad in the margins. Great job on math, kiddo, and so proud of you. Birthday card signed, Love, Papa David. A Father's Day drawing from the youngest boy showing a stick figure family of 6, Mike, Jennifer, 3 kids, and a man labeled Papa Dave. Jake found the birth certificates in the third folder. Michael Torres Jr., father listed as David Chin. Sarah Torres, father listed as David Chin. Jennifer Torres, wait, that's weird, different last name but same father listing. He looked up at me. Mia, according to this, the oldest kid was born 2 years before your parents got married. The room was spinning. I grabbed the birth certificate from his hands. Jennifer Torres, born March 15, 1996. I was born in November of 1995. Jake, I whispered. Jennifer isn't Mike's wife. She's Dad's daughter. The other 2 are Dad's kids too. But that would make them your half-siblings. And Dad was supporting his first family while Mom was dying. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code now. I'd memorized it from the bank statements. Hello, Mia. The voice was young, female, eerily calm. This is Jennifer Torres. I think you've been doing some research since yesterday. How did you? Your father told us you were smart. He also told us that when the time came, you'd understand why he made the choices he did. We're not the enemy here. Jake was frantically photographing documents with his phone, but I couldn't focus on anything except Jennifer's voice. She sounded so much like me at 18, determined, a little scared, trying to sound braver than she felt. The house, Jennifer. Your text said Mike was promised half the house. Not Mike. Us. Your father promised to take care of us, and now he's gone. We need to talk about how that's going to work. I hung up on Jennifer and immediately called our family lawyer, Patricia Wong. She'd handled Dad's will, Mom's medical directives, everything official in our lives since I was 12. Patricia, I need to see you today. It's about Dad's estate and some complications. Her voice shifted to that careful tone lawyers use when they smell trouble. What kind of complications, Mia? The kind where I just found out Dad had 3 other kids he was supporting for years. Silence stretched across the line. Then, come in at noon. Bring everything you found. Jake helped me pack 2 shopping bags full of documents, photographs, and bank records. As we loaded his car, I kept thinking about Mom's last months, how she'd insisted on generic everything, how she'd made me return a $40 sweater because it was too extravagant, how she cried in the pharmacy parking lot when her prescription cost $340. All while Dad was sending his other family enough money to cover a mortgage payment. Patricia's office felt different now, like I was seeing it through new eyes. The family photos on her desk, the diplomas on the wall, markers of a life built on honest foundations. Everything mine wasn't. She spread Dad's documents across her conference table with the methodical precision of someone who'd seen family secrets explode before. After 20 minutes of reading, she looked up with the expression I'd been dreading. Mia, legally speaking, you're in a very complicated position. How complicated? Your father's will is clear, the house goes to you as the sole surviving heir. But these support payments create what we call an implied obligation. If the other family can prove he promised them ongoing support, they might have grounds for a claim against the estate. Jake leaned forward. But he never legally adopted them, right? Their birth certificates list him as father, but there's no adoption paperwork here. Patricia nodded. That's correct, which works in Mia's favor. However, 15 years of consistent support payments, combined with this handwritten promise about the house. She held up Dad's letter to Mike. This could be interpreted as a verbal contract. What does that mean, exactly? It means Jennifer Torres and her siblings could potentially force the sale of your house to claim their rightful share. Even if they only get a quarter of the proceeds, that's still $75,000 to $100,000 based on current property values. The room felt like it was shrinking. So I could lose my house because my father couldn't keep it in his pants. We'll fight it, obviously. But Mia, there's something else. Patricia pulled out a file I recognized, Mom's medical records from her final treatments. I helped your mother apply for financial hardship assistance from the hospital. She had to disclose your father's income and assets. If these support payments were happening during that time and she didn't know about them. That's fraud, Jake said quietly. Medicaid fraud, specifically. If your mother received any government assistance based on false financial information, your father committed a federal crime. And if he's deceased, liability could transfer to his estate, meaning you. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer, Starbucks on Market Street. 3 p.m. I'll be the one who looks like you, I showed the message to Patricia, who frowned. Don't go alone. And don't agree to anything without me present. Actually, I said, scrolling through the photos Jake had taken of Dad's documents, I think I want to hear what she has to say. But first, I need you to do something for me. What kind of something? I found the photo I was looking for, Dad at what looked like a high school graduation, his arm around Jennifer in a cap and gown, both of them beaming. In the background, slightly blurred but unmistakable, was a banner reading, Westfield High Class of 2014. I need you to pull Jennifer Torres' school records from Westfield High. And I need you to cross-reference them with the dates Dad claimed business trips to Portland. Patricia raised an eyebrow. Why Portland specifically? Because Westfield High is in Portland. And because Dad's credit card statements from 2014 show hotel charges there every month from September to June. Right around the time his business conferences started requiring overnight stays. Jake was already Googling. Mia, Westfield High's graduation was June 15, 2014. Look at this photo again, the timestamp says June 15th. So Dad missed my 18th birthday party to attend his other daughter's high school graduation. The words tasted bitter. And he probably paid for her college too. Patricia made a note. I'll have my investigator pull academic records for all 3 children. If your father was paying tuition, there will be a paper trail. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, Jennifer sitting in a Starbucks, holding up a sign with my name on it. She looked exactly like me at 18, down to the stubborn set of her jaw and the way she held her left shoulder slightly higher than her right. The message underneath read, "Your move, big sister." I grabbed my purse. Patricia, I need those records by tomorrow morning. Jake, you're driving me to Starbucks. Mia, I really don't think. She called me big sister, Patricia. Which means she knows exactly how old I am, exactly when I was born, and exactly what that means about Dad's timeline. I headed for the door. I'm done being the only person in this family who didn't know the truth. The Starbucks on Market Street smelled like burnt coffee and lies. Jennifer had claimed a corner table, positioning herself so she could see everyone coming and going. Smart girl, Dad would have been proud of that tactical thinking. He'd taught me the same thing when I was her age. She stood up as Jake and I approached, and the resemblance hit me like a physical blow. Not just the facial features, but the way she moved, the way she tucked her hair behind her left ear when she was nervous. Even her voice had the same slight rasp mine got when I was trying not to cry. You brought backup, she said, glancing at Jake. You brought leverage, I replied, nodding at the manila folder on her table. I'm guessing that's not your homework. She smiled, Dad's crooked smile that I'd seen in the mirror my entire life. Sit down, Mia. Please. This doesn't have to be a war. Jake pulled out the chair next to me but stayed standing. Jennifer opened her folder and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Dad pushing a little girl on a swing set, both of them laughing. The timestamp read August 2010. That's me at 14, Jennifer said. Right after Mom died. Dad promised he'd never abandon us like she did. The words hit wrong. Your mother died. Ovarian cancer. Stage 4 by the time they caught it. Jennifer's voice got quieter. Dad was the only stable thing in our lives after that. Mike tried, but he's not our real father. I stared at the photo, doing math that made my stomach churn. August 2010 was right after my parents' 15th wedding anniversary. They'd renewed their vows that summer, I'd helped Mom pick out her dress. So while my parents were planning their vow renewal, Dad was playing single father in Portland. He wasn't playing anything. Jennifer's jaw tightened. He was keeping his promises. To us and to your mother. Jake finally sat down. What promises to my aunt? Jennifer pulled out another document, this one looked official, with letterhead from St. Mary's Hospital. The same hospital where Mom had received treatment. Your mother's final treatment plan, she said. Paid in full by David Chen, with a notation for family hardship assistance. She received $47,000 in reduced cost care because Dad claimed financial distress. My blood went cold. He claimed financial distress while sending you guys $3,200 a month. He claimed financial distress because he was sending us $3,200 a month. And the tuition payments. And Michael Jr.'s orthodontist bills. And Sarah's club soccer fees. Jennifer leaned forward. Dad was supporting 7 people on one salary, Mia. Your mother got the help she needed because he made sure the numbers worked. Jake grabbed the hospital document. This is fraud. Your father committed Medicaid fraud. My father did what he had to do to keep everyone alive. Jennifer's voice rose slightly. Your mother got her treatment. We kept our house after Mom died. Everyone survived. Everyone except Dad, I said quietly. All that stress, all those promises to keep, is that why he had the heart attack? For the first time, Jennifer's composed mask slipped. Her eyes filled with tears she'd been holding back since the funeral. The day before he died, he called me. Said he'd figured out how to make everything right. The house was almost paid off, and once your mother. She stopped, wiping her eyes. Once it was just you, he was going to tell you about us. He wanted you to meet Michael Jr. and Sarah. He said you'd be a good big sister. I thought about Mom's final weeks, how she kept asking if I'd be okay alone, if I'd have enough money, if the house payments would be manageable. How she'd made me promise to be smart about the future and make sure your father's sacrifices meant something. Maybe she'd known. Maybe she'd always known. The house, Jennifer. Mike's claimed that Dad promised him half the house. Jennifer shook her head. Not Mike. Us. Dad promised that if anything happened to him, we'd have a place to belong. Michael Jr. starts high school next year, Westfield High, same school Dad helped me graduate from. Sarah's already enrolled in the art program there. So you want me to sell my childhood home so you can keep yours? I want us to figure out how to be a family. Like Dad wanted. She slid one final document across the table. A quitclaim deed, already prepared, splitting ownership of the house 60-40 between me and the Torres family trust. Dad drafted this himself. It's dated 3 weeks before he died. My hands were shaking as I picked up the deed. Dad's signature was shaky too, probably already feeling the strain that would kill him days later. Jake leaned over. Mia, don't sign anything right now. But I wasn't looking at the signature line. I was looking at the witness signature at the bottom of the page. Patricia Wong. Our family lawyer had witnessed this document and never said a word. The confrontation with Patricia Wong felt like walking into an ambush I should have seen coming. Her secretary tried to tell me she was in meetings all afternoon, but I pushed past the desk and knocked on her office door until she opened it. Mia, I really can't discuss. You witnessed Dad's quitclaim deed 3 weeks before he died. I held up the document Jennifer had shown me. You've known about the Torres family this entire time. Patricia's face went carefully blank, the same expression she'd worn 2 hours earlier when I thought she was hearing about Dad's other children for the first time. She stepped aside to let me into her office, then closed the door with the deliberate care of someone buying time to think. Sit down. Please. I'd rather stand. I'd rather you explain why you lied to me today about being shocked by these complications. She moved behind her desk like it was a shield. Your father asked me to handle his affairs with absolute discretion. Even after his death, attorney-client privilege extends to lying to his surviving family about forged legal documents. The deed isn't forged, Mia. David drafted it himself, brought it to me for proper witnessing, and asked me to hold it until after your mother passed away. Patricia pulled a file from her locked cabinet. He also left this for you. Inside the file was a sealed envelope with my name in Dad's handwriting. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind he only used for important letters. My hands shook as I opened it. Mia. Asterisk if you're reading this, then Patricia has told you about Jennifer, Michael Jr., and Sarah. I know this isn't how I wanted you to find out, but I ran out of time to do it right, asterisk. Asterisk your mother never knew. I need you to understand that, she died believing I was faithful, believing our life together was complete. That was the greatest gift I could give her after everything she'd suffered, asterisk. Asterisk Jennifer's mother, Carmen, was someone I knew before I met your mother. When Carmen got sick, she asked me to be the father her children needed. I couldn't say no, not when I looked at Jennifer and saw the same stubbornness you showed at her age, not when the boys needed someone to teach them how to throw a baseball, asterisk. Asterisk I don't expect you to forgive me for the financial strain this put on our family. Every month I sent money to Portland, I thought about your mother counting pills and checking grocery receipts. But losing Carmen's children would have been like losing you, and I couldn't survive that twice, asterisk. Asterisk the quitclaim deed gives them 40% of the house value, not ownership of the physical property. You can buy them out with the life insurance money, or you can sell and split the proceeds. Either way, you keep control of what happens, asterisk. Asterisk Jennifer is smart like you, stubborn like you, and scared like you probably are right now. Michael Jr. builds things with his hands the same way you used to, remember your cardboard city phase? Sarah draws horses constantly, just like you did at her age, asterisk. Asterisk they're your siblings, Mia. They're also strangers. I don't know how to fix that, but I hope you'll try, asterisk. Asterisk the safety deposit box key is taped under the bottom drawer of my desk. Box 347 at First National. Everything else you need to know is in there, asterisk. Asterisk I love you. I love them. I couldn't figure out how to do both without hurting someone, asterisk. Dad. I read the letter twice before looking up at Patricia, who was watching me with something that might have been sympathy. The safety deposit box, I said. You know what's in it. Financial records going back 15 years. Documentation of every payment, every school expense, every medical bill for both families. And Carmen's will, naming your father as guardian if anything happened to Mike. Carmen was married to Mike Torres. Carmen Martinez married Mike Torres when Jennifer was 2. He adopted her legally, but she never stopped calling David Papa. Patricia pulled out another file. When Carmen died, she left explicit instructions that David should remain involved in all 3 children's lives. Mike honored that, even though it complicated his own relationship with them. I thought about Mike at the funeral, the way he'd stood slightly apart from Jennifer and the boys, the way Jennifer had responded to him like a stepfather she tolerated rather than loved. So Mike isn't trying to steal my house. He's trying to honor his dead wife's wishes and my father's promises. The quitclaim deed was David's way of ensuring the children's security without forcing you to share your actual home. With your mother's life insurance and David's pension, you should have enough to buy out their share and keep the house. My phone buzzed. Text from Jennifer, asterisk meet us at the house tomorrow at noon. All of us. It's time you met Michael Jr. and Sarah properly, asterisk. Another text, asterisk and Mia. I read Dad's letter to you before I gave it to Patricia. We don't want to take your home away. We just want to know we belong somewhere, asterisk. A final message, this one with a photo attached. 3 kids standing in front of a house that looked exactly like mine, same blue shutters, same front porch, same oak tree in the yard. But this house was in Portland, and these were children I'd never seen before yesterday. Children who looked like me at their ages. The message read, asterisk, this was our house until Dad died. We've been staying with Mike's sister, but she can't keep us much longer. The house sale closes next week, asterisk. I stared at the photo, finally understanding the real timeline. Dad hadn't been supporting his secret family in addition to ours, he'd been supporting his first family until they lost everything, then trying to figure out how to blend us all together before it was too late. Patricia, I said quietly, I need you to prepare a different kind of legal document. The safety deposit box at First National contained 15 years of my father's double life, organized with the same meticulous care he'd brought to our family's tax returns. 3 thick manila envelopes labeled Carmen's Medical, Children's Education, and Emergency Fund, Portland House. I spread the contents across the bank's private viewing room table while Jake photographed everything. The medical bills alone told a story I wasn't prepared for. Carmen Martinez Torres had fought ovarian cancer for 3 years, accumulating $340,000 in treatment costs that insurance refused to cover. Dad had paid $180,000 of it directly. Look at this, Jake said, holding up a handwritten payment plan from Oregon Health Sciences University. Your father negotiated a 5-year settlement for the remaining balance. He was still making payments when he died. The education folder was worse. Private school tuition for Jennifer from grades 6 to 12, totaling $67,000. Michael Jr.'s learning disability assessments and specialized tutoring, another $23,000. Sarah's art therapy sessions after her mother died, $8,400 over 2 years. But the emergency fund envelope contained something that made my hands shake, copies of every loan application Dad had submitted during Mom's treatment. 3 separate requests for home equity lines of credit, all approved, all used to keep both families afloat simultaneously. Mia, Jake said quietly, your dad borrowed $85,000 against your house to pay for their mother's cancer treatment. Then he borrowed another $40,000 to cover your mom's medical bills when insurance maxed out. The math was brutal. Dad had leveraged our home 3 times over, creating a house of cards that only worked if he stayed alive to keep making payments. The heart attack hadn't just killed him, it had collapsed a financial structure that depended on his income to survive. My phone rang. Patricia Wong. Mia, we have a problem. I just received a call from Jennifer Torres. The Portland house sale I mentioned. It fell through. The buyers discovered a lien against the property from the hospital where Carmen was treated. What kind of lien? $127,000. Apparently your father's payment plan had a clause, if he died before the balance was cleared, the debt would attach to any property associated with Carmen's estate. Since the house was in her name when she died, and David was listed as co-executor. I closed my eyes, seeing the trap Dad had built around all of us. They can't sell their house because Dad still owed money for their mother's medical treatment. Correct. And without the sale proceeds, they have no way to pay off the lien. Which means they're about to be homeless. Jake was shaking his head. How much total debt are we talking about, across both families? I did the math on my phone calculator, adding up every outstanding balance from the safety deposit box documents. Hospital liens, $127,000. Remaining home equity loans, $89,000. Credit cards Dad used for emergency expenses, $34,000. Plus the monthly support payments he promised would continue until Michael Jr. turns 18. Jesus Christ. That's $250,000. Actually, Patricia's voice came through the phone speaker, it's worse than that. The life insurance policy your father carried was only for $150,000. After burial expenses and final medical bills, you're looking at maybe $130,000 in actual proceeds. My chest felt tight. So even if I use every penny of Dad's life insurance, we're still $120,000 short of clearing all his obligations. Which brings us back to the house. Current market value is approximately $380,000. If you sell and split proceeds according to the quitclaim deed, your 60% comes to $228,000. Their 40% would be $152,000, enough to clear the Portland house lien and give them a fresh start. Jake was staring at me. Mia, that would leave you with maybe $100,000 after paying off the home equity loans. Not enough to buy another house in this market. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, asterisk Mike's sister says we have to be out by Friday. We're packing everything into a storage unit. Michael Jr. keeps asking when we're going home, asterisk. Another message, asterisk I know this is a lot. But we're family. Dad believed family finds a way, asterisk. A photo came through, the 3 Torres kids sitting on cardboard boxes in what looked like a garage, surrounded by everything they owned. Michael Jr. was holding a framed photo of Dad teaching him to ride a bike. Sarah clutched a stuffed horse that looked identical to one I'd had at her age. But it was Jennifer's face that broke me, the same expression I'd worn at 18 when I'd realized our family couldn't afford to send me to my first choice college. The look of someone trying to be brave while watching their world collapse. I thought about Mom's final words to me, make sure your father's sacrifices meant something. Maybe this was what she'd meant. Maybe she'd known all along that Dad's love was bigger than our small family could contain, and she'd been preparing me to carry that love forward. Patricia, I said, I need you to draft a different kind of agreement. Not a sale, a trust. The trust documents took Patricia 3 days to draft, and every hour felt like watching a countdown timer on my family's future. Jennifer texted updates that made my stomach churn, asterisk storage unit costs $180 per month. Michael Jr. started at Lincoln Middle today, 3rd school this year, asterisk then, asterisk Sarah won't stop crying. She thinks this is her fault somehow, asterisk. But it was the call from Mike Torres on Wednesday night that changed everything. Mia. This is Mike. Jennifer's stepfather. His voice was gravelly, tired. I think there are some things you need to know before you make any permanent decisions about that trust. What kind of things? Things your father didn't put in his safety deposit box. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? Just you, Jennifer doesn't know I'm calling. I met Mike at a diner in Northeast Portland, 40 minutes from my house but apparently 5 minutes from his work. He looked older than he had at the funeral, worn down in the way that suggested he'd been carrying weight that wasn't entirely his to bear. Your father was a good man, he said without preamble, sliding a manila envelope across the table. But he wasn't perfect, and some of his choices are about to crash down on you kids. Inside the envelope were bank statements I hadn't seen before, not Dad's accounts, but Mike's. Deposits of $3,200 monthly, like clockwork, but the money hadn't stayed there. Most of it had been immediately transferred out again, to accounts labeled Carmen Medical Fund and Torres Children Education. I never kept your father's money for myself, Mike said. Every penny went directly to the kids or to pay down Carmen's medical debt. David insisted on sending it to my account because he said it looked better for tax purposes. Tax purposes. My skin went cold. Mike, did my father claim those support payments as tax deductions? Child support for dependents, yeah. He said his accountant told him it was legal since the kids were biologically his and he was their primary financial support. Mike rubbed his forehead. Mia, I don't think your father understood what that meant for the rest of us. I was already pulling out my phone, searching for tax law websites. What I found made my hands shake. If Dad claimed $38,400 annually in child support deductions for kids who don't live with him, and you didn't report that money as income. I looked up at Mike. You've been committing tax evasion for 5 years. Accidentally, but still. Gets worse. Jennifer got financial aid for community college based on my income, not including David's support. Michael Jr.'s on free lunch at school. Sarah's getting subsidized art therapy through the county. Every benefit the Torres family had received was based on income calculations that didn't include Dad's $3,200 monthly payments. Benefits fraud, stacked on top of tax evasion, stacked on top of the medical assistance fraud Mom had unknowingly participated in. How much trouble are we talking about, Mike? I called a tax attorney yesterday. Conservative estimate. The IRS will want $47,000 in back taxes and penalties from me. The state will want another $12,000. And if they audit Jennifer's college aid or the kids' school benefits. He shrugged helplessly. We could be looking at $80,000 in total liability. I stared at him across the diner table, finally understanding the full scope of Dad's financial house of cards. Every solution he'd created had generated 2 new problems. Every promise he'd made had required 3 new lies to maintain. There's one more thing, Mike said quietly. The reason I really called you. He pulled out a letter addressed to him in Dad's handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before the heart attack. David was going to stop the monthly payments after your mother died. He said it was time for all of us to face reality and figure out how to be honest about what we've been doing. Mike's voice got quieter. He was planning to turn himself into the IRS, Mia. He was going to confess everything and try to work out payment plans for all the back taxes and penalties. The letter contained Dad's calculations, written in his neat engineer's handwriting. Total estimated tax liability across both families, $127,000. His proposed solution, sell both houses, use the proceeds to clear all debts and penalties, then relocate everyone to a smaller city where the cost of living would let us start over. Dad's final plan had been to blow up both families' lives in order to save them. He never got the chance, Mike said. Heart attack hit him the day before he was supposed to call his accountant. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer, Patricia says you're setting up some kind of trust. What does that mean for us, ? I looked at Mike, who was watching me with the expression of a man who just handed over a live grenade. It means, I said slowly, that we're all in a lot more trouble than anyone realized. The meeting with the IRS agent was scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m. Agent Carol Martinez had a voice like gravel and the kind of patience that suggested she'd heard every sob story in the book. When I called to report the tax irregularities myself, before someone else could, she'd listen to my stammering explanation with the detached interest of someone calculating penalties in her head. Ms. Chen, you're saying your deceased father claimed $192,000 in child support deductions over 5 years for children who don't live in his state of residence. That's correct. And the recipients didn't report it as income. And you're voluntarily disclosing this because I was tired of living in the wreckage of Dad's good intentions. Because Jennifer Torres was 18 years old and shouldn't have to face federal fraud charges for financial aid applications she'd filled out honestly based on the information she had. Because I'd found something in Dad's final papers that changed everything. Because my father left documentation showing this was his error, not theirs. And because I want to make it right. Agent Martinez scheduled our meeting for the following Monday. All parties involved, me, Mike Torres, Jennifer, and our respective tax attorneys. Patricia had referred me to a specialist in voluntary disclosure cases, a thin man named Robert Kim who charged $400 an hour and spoke exclusively in worst-case scenarios. The penalties alone could exceed $75,000, he told me during our consultation. The IRS doesn't typically show leniency just because the violations were unintentional. But Saturday morning brought a call that changed those calculations completely. Mia, it's Patricia. I need you to come to my office immediately. And bring Jake, you're going to need a witness for this. She was waiting in her conference room with boxes of documents I'd never seen before, files marked with Dad's name but stored in a section of her office I hadn't known existed. These were in your father's secondary safety deposit box, she said without preamble. Box 451, different bank. The key was hidden in his workshop, taped inside that old toolbox you asked me to donate to Goodwill. Jake whistled low as Patricia spread the contents across her table. Stock certificates, bond documentation, and account statements for investment portfolios I'd had no idea Dad owned. Your father was more financially sophisticated than either family realized, Patricia said. These accounts total approximately $340,000 in current market value. My hands shook as I picked up the account statements. Systematic investments going back 12 years, conservative growth funds and blue-chip stocks, all under an LLC called Chen Family Holdings. He was building a safety net, I said quietly. For all of us. There's more. Patricia handed me a sealed letter marked, for Mia and Jennifer, to be opened together. Together. Your father's instructions were very specific. Both of you have to be present when this letter is read, and you have to read it before the IRS meeting on Monday. I called Jennifer from Patricia's office. She answered on the first ring. The lawyer says you found more money. Her voice was carefully neutral, but I could hear hope underneath. We found Dad's real plan. Can you get here by 2 p.m.? And Jennifer, bring Michael Jr. and Sarah. The letter mentions all of you by name. Patricia's conference room felt too small for 6 people and 15 years of secrets. Jennifer sat across from me with her siblings flanked on either side, while Jake positioned himself near the door like he was ready to bolt. Patricia held Dad's final letter like it contained either salvation or destruction. Probably both. Should I just read it aloud? Patricia asked. I looked at Jennifer, who nodded. Michael Jr. was clutching that same photo of Dad teaching him to ride a bike. Sarah had brought her sketchpad and was drawing horses in the margins, her way of coping with anxiety that felt achingly familiar. Patricia opened the envelope, and Dad's voice filled the room one last time. To my daughters Mia and Jennifer. Asterisk if you're reading this together, then Patricia has done what I asked and you found the investment accounts. By now you also know about the tax problems I created, and you're probably wondering if your old man lost his mind somewhere along the way, asterisk. The answer is yes and no. Asterisk Jennifer, your mother made me promise something the night before she died. She said the kids deserved better than growing up with Mike's family's resentment. They'd never wanted him to marry a woman with a baby, and Carmen knew they'd take that out on you three after she was gone. She asked me to give you all a chance at the life she couldn't provide, asterisk. Asterisk Mia, your mother knew. Not everything, but enough. She knew I was supporting other children, and she knew why. The night she made me promise to make sure the sacrifices meant something, she wasn't talking about her medical bills. She was talking about Carmen's kids, asterisk. Asterisk the investment accounts were your mother's idea. Every month, after I sent money to Portland, she would take an equal amount from our budget and invest it. If you're going to support 7 people, she told me, then you'd better make sure all 7 people have a future. She died believing this money would eventually bring both families together, asterisk. Asterisk Jennifer, the reason I never told you about these accounts is because I needed you to be hungry. Hungry kids work harder, study more, appreciate what they have. If you'd known there was $340,000 waiting for you, would you have earned that 3.8 GPA? Would you have pushed yourself to get into Portland State's engineering program, asterisk. Asterisk Mia, the reason I put the accounts in an LLC was to protect them from medical bankruptcy. If your mother's treatment had cost more, if I died sooner, these investments would have been untouchable by creditors or the IRS, asterisk. Asterisk here's what happens next. The LLC legally owns the investment accounts, and both of you are listed as equal beneficiaries. Jennifer, you get $170,000 to clear the Portland house lien, pay off Mike's tax penalties, and fund your college education. Mia, you get $170,000 to clear the home equity loans and buy out the Torres family's 40% stake in our house, asterisk. Asterisk the investments mature on your 25th birthday, Mia, that's next month. Jennifer, yours mature when you turn 21 in 3 years, but the LLC allows for emergency distributions if Patricia determines the need is legitimate, asterisk. Asterisk there's one condition. You have to agree to be sisters. Real sisters, not just people who share DNA. That means family dinners, birthday calls, and Michael Jr. and Sarah knowing they have a big sister who will teach them things I can't anymore. Your mother's last words to me were, make sure they all belong somewhere. This is how you make that happen, asterisk. If you can't agree to be a family, then the investments get donated to the American Cancer Society and you both figure out how to solve these problems without me. Asterisk I love you both. I'm sorry I couldn't figure out how to love you without making everything so complicated, asterisk. Dad. Patricia set the letter down and looked at both of us. There's one more document. A formal agreement that has to be signed by both parties before the investments can be accessed. Jennifer was crying, the first tears I'd seen her shed since the funeral. Michael Jr. had moved closer to her chair, and Sarah was drawing what looked like 2 stick figures holding hands. A family agreement, I said quietly. Essentially, yes. You both commit to maintaining regular contact, sharing holiday celebrations, and providing mutual support for Michael Jr. and Sarah's upbringing. In exchange, you each receive enough money to solve your immediate problems and build stable futures. Jennifer wiped her eyes and looked at me directly for the first time since we'd sat down. What if we can't stand each other after a year? I thought about Mom's final months, how she kept asking if I'd be okay alone. Maybe she'd already known I wouldn't be alone, that Dad's complicated love had given me siblings whether I wanted them or not. Then we fake it until we figure it out. The family agreement sat on Patricia's table between Jennifer and me like a contract for emotional intimacy neither of us knew how to navigate. The legal language was straightforward, shared custody decisions for Michael Jr. and Sarah, alternating holidays, monthly video calls, but the reality felt impossible. There's something else we need to discuss before you sign this, Patricia said, pulling out yet another folder. The IRS meeting on Monday. Agent Martinez called this morning with additional questions. Jennifer's face went pale. What kind of questions? She's requesting documentation for all educational expenses your father paid directly to institutions. Apparently, some of those payments might qualify as gift tax violations rather than child support. Jake leaned forward. What's the difference? Child support is tax-deductible for the payer, taxable income for the recipient. Educational gifts over $15,000 annually trigger federal gift tax obligations, which David never paid. Patricia spread out a new set of calculations. We're looking at potentially $23,000 in additional penalties. My phone buzzed with a call from an unknown Oregon number. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. Is this Mia Chen? The voice was elderly, female, cautious. Yes. This is Eleanor Martinez. Carmen Torres was my daughter. Jennifer's head snapped up at the name. She mouthed, Carmen's mother, and I nodded. Mrs. Martinez, how did you get this number? From Mike. He told me about the tax troubles, about the money problems. I need to tell you something about your father that might help with your government meeting. I put the phone on speaker. Jennifer was gripping the edge of the table. What kind of something? David came to see me 3 months before he died. Brought a lawyer with him, not Patricia, someone else. They had me sign papers transferring some of Carmen's medical debt into David's name officially. He said it would help with tax complications later. Patricia was already pulling up files on her laptop. Mrs. Martinez, do you remember the lawyer's name? Thomas Chen. David's brother. The conference room went dead silent. I'd never heard Dad mention a brother named Thomas. Jennifer was staring at me with the same confusion I felt. Ma'am, I said carefully, I don't think my father had a brother named Thomas. Eleanor Martinez laughed, but it sounded bitter. Not his blood brother. His business partner from 15 years ago. They started some kind of consulting company together, but it failed. Thomas moved to Oregon, became a tax attorney. That's how David found him when Carmen got sick. Patricia was typing furiously. Mrs. Martinez, these debt transfer documents, do you have copies? Everything's in a box in my closet. Thomas said to keep them safe in case the IRS ever came asking questions. He said David was being proactive about liability management. My stomach dropped. Dad hadn't just been hiding money and making questionable tax choices, he'd been working with a lawyer to systematically restructure debt and legal obligations across state lines. Jennifer, I said quietly, I think we're dealing with something bigger than tax evasion. Patricia ended the call with Mrs. Martinez and immediately started making notes. If David was working with a tax attorney to deliberately restructure these obligations, that changes everything about Monday's meeting. This wasn't accidental non-compliance, this was planned tax strategy. Is that better or worse for us? Potentially much worse. Planned tax avoidance can trigger criminal charges, not just civil penalties. Jennifer stood up abruptly. I need some air. She walked to Patricia's window and stood there with her back to all of us, shoulders rigid. Michael Jr. followed her, touching her arm gently. Jen. Are we in trouble? I don't know, buddy. Sarah looked up from her drawing. Is Papa Dave in trouble? The question hung in the air like smoke. How do you explain to a 10-year-old that the man who taught her to ride a bike might have committed federal crimes to pay for her art classes? Jennifer turned around. Mia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you think Dad was trying to take care of us, or do you think he was trying to hide money from the government? I looked at her standing there, 18 years old, responsible for 2 younger siblings, facing potential criminal charges for financial decisions she'd never made, and realized that the family agreement on Patricia's table was about more than shared holidays and birthday calls. It was about whether we trusted Dad's motives enough to face the consequences together. The meeting with Thomas Chen took place in a strip mall law office that smelled like burnt coffee and broken dreams. Patricia had tracked him down through the Oregon State Bar Association, and he'd agreed to see us only after she'd mentioned potential criminal liability for his former clients. He looked nothing like Dad, short where Dad had been tall, soft where Dad had been angular, but the way he organized papers on his desk in perfect parallel lines was achingly familiar. Your father was trying to protect everyone, Thomas said without preamble, sliding a thick file across his desk. But he made some choices that I advised against. Jennifer sat beside me, Michael Jr. on her other side. We'd decided the night before that we were done with secrets, done with partial truths. Whatever Thomas revealed, we'd face it together. What kind of choices? I asked. The debt transfers, primarily. When Carmen got sick, David was determined to take legal responsibility for her medical bills. I explained that doing so would create tax complications, potential gift tax violations, possible scrutiny from federal agencies. Thomas shrugged. He didn't care. He said he'd rather face the IRS than let those kids lose their home. The file contained correspondence between Thomas and Dad spanning 3 years. Email chains about liability restructuring and asset protection strategies that read like a manual for financial shell games. Look at this, Jennifer said, pointing to an email dated 6 months before Dad's heart attack. He's asking Thomas about something called beneficial ownership disclosure. What does that mean? Thomas's expression darkened. Your father was concerned that the LLC holding the investment accounts might trigger reporting requirements under federal banking laws. Accounts over $250,000 with unclear ownership structure sometimes get flagged for money laundering investigations. My blood went cold. Money laundering? David wasn't laundering money, but the account structure looked suspicious. Multiple beneficiaries, cross-state transfers, connections to medical debt in different names. Thomas pulled out another document. I advised him to restructure everything legally, file amended tax returns, pay the penalties voluntarily. He said he would, right after your mother's treatment was finished. But she died first, I said quietly. She died first, and then David had his heart attack before we could implement any of the compliance measures. Thomas leaned back in his chair. Ms. Chen, Ms. Torres, you're about to walk into an IRS meeting carrying the remnants of a very sophisticated financial structure that was never properly documented. Agent Martinez isn't just looking at tax penalties anymore. Jennifer grabbed my arm. What does that mean? It means, Thomas said, that without proper legal representation, you could both face charges related to conspiracy to evade federal taxes, even though neither of you knew what David was doing. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Martinez, * meeting moved to Tuesday 9 a.m. Federal prosecutor will be present. Bring counsel, *. Federal prosecutor. The words made my hands shake. Thomas, I said, we have $340,000 in investment accounts that we can't access without signing a family agreement. We have 2 houses that can't be sold because of medical liens. We have 5 people who could face criminal charges for things they didn't understand they were doing. I looked at Jennifer, who was gripping Michael Jr.'s hand. What would you do? Thomas was quiet for a long moment, studying documents that represented 15 years of Dad's desperate financial juggling. I'd hire the best federal tax defense attorney you can afford, liquidate those investments immediately to pay for representation, and prepare to spend the next 2 years proving your father's good intentions to people who don't care about good intentions. Jennifer met my eyes across the desk. The family agreement. Sign it today. Whatever happens Tuesday, you'll face it together or not at all. We signed the family agreement at 11:47 p.m. Sunday night in Patricia's office, with only the emergency lighting casting shadows across the conference table. Jennifer's signature was shakier than mine, but we both managed to write our names without crying. The investment accounts unlocked automatically at midnight, $340,000 that felt more like a countdown timer than a windfall. By 12:15 a.m., Patricia had transferred $85,000 to Thomas Chen's retainer account for federal defense representation. Another $12,000 went to a forensic accountant who specialized in reconstructing complex family financial structures for criminal defense cases. We're burning through this money fast, Jennifer said, watching the account balances update on Patricia's laptop screen. Better than burning in federal prison, I replied, though the words tasted like ash. Thomas had been blunt about our timeline. Agent Martinez expected full financial disclosure by Tuesday morning. That gave us 36 hours to untangle 15 years of Dad's financial decisions and present them in a way that looked like confused family support rather than systematic tax fraud. The forensic accountant, a severe woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, arrived at Patricia's office at 6 a.m. Monday morning carrying 3 laptops and a kind of focused intensity that suggested she'd been working all night. Your father was meticulous, she said, spreading printouts across every available surface. Every payment documented, every medical bill cross-referenced, every school expense categorized. This isn't the work of someone trying to hide money from the government. She pulled up a spreadsheet that made my head spin, columns of dates, amounts, recipients, and tax classifications that painted a picture of Dad's double life in ruthless numerical detail. The good news is that David's record-keeping will support an argument for good faith compliance attempts. The bad news is that the amounts involved trigger mandatory federal oversight regardless of intent. Jennifer was studying a printout that showed Dad's payment schedule to Portland. Dr. Kim, these amounts, they go up every time one of us had a medical emergency or started a new school year. Correct. David was responding to family needs, not following a predetermined payment structure. That suggests genuine support rather than systematic evasion. Dr. Kim highlighted several entries in yellow. However, the IRS will argue that the amounts exceed reasonable child support by approximately $180,000 over 5 years. Meaning what? I asked. Meaning $180,000 in potential gift tax violations, plus penalties and interest. Conservative estimate, $67,000 in additional liability. My phone rang. Agent Martinez, calling 12 hours before our scheduled meeting. Ms. Chen, I need to inform you that tomorrow's interview will be conducted under criminal investigation protocols. You have the right to legal representation, and anything you say can be used in federal prosecution. The room went dead silent. Jennifer grabbed Michael Jr.'s hand so hard he winced. Agent Martinez, are you saying we're being charged with crimes? I'm saying the financial patterns we've identified suggest possible coordination between multiple parties to evade federal tax obligations. The prosecutor will determine what charges, if any, are appropriate. After I hung up, Dr. Kim cleared her throat. There's one more thing. I found something in your father's records that Agent Martinez doesn't know about yet. She pulled out a manila folder I hadn't seen before, labeled, Emergency Disclosure, Break Glass. David prepared a complete confession. Every payment, every tax implication, every legal violation he committed. It's dated 1 week before his heart attack, addressed to the IRS, with instructions for Thomas to file it if anything happened to him. Thomas looked stricken. I never received any confession letter. Because David mailed it to himself, return receipt requested. It's been sitting in his post office box for 8 months. Dr. Kim slid the certified mail receipt across the table. The confession clears both families of criminal intent. But it also documents federal tax violations totaling $127,000. Jennifer was staring at the receipt like it was a live grenade. So Dad's trying to save us from prison by confessing to crimes that could bankrupt us anyway. There's a third option, Thomas said quietly. We present the confession to Agent Martinez tomorrow, along with full restitution from the investment accounts. Federal prosecutors sometimes accept voluntary disclosure and complete payment in lieu of criminal charges. I looked at Jennifer, who was doing math on her phone calculator. If we pay $127,000 in back taxes and penalties, that leaves us with $213,000 to split. Not enough to solve everyone's problems. But enough to keep everyone out of prison, she replied. At 6:47 a.m. Tuesday morning, I sat in my childhood kitchen drinking coffee and staring at Dad's confession letter. Jennifer was across the table feeding Sarah scrambled eggs, while Michael Jr. worked on homework that was already 2 days late because of everything falling apart. We looked like a family. Felt like strangers planning a bank robbery. You ready for this? Jennifer asked. I thought about Mom's final words, about Dad's desperate juggling act, about 3 kids who deserved better than growing up defined by their father's crimes. No. But let's go anyway. The federal building in downtown Portland felt like a monument to consequences. Jennifer and I walked through metal detectors at 8:45 a.m., flanked by Thomas and Patricia, carrying bankers' boxes full of Dad's meticulous documentation of 15 years of financial deception. Agent Martinez was waiting in conference room C with a man who introduced himself as federal prosecutor James Walsh. He looked exactly like Central Casting would order for, government attorney who destroys families before lunch, steel gray hair, rimless glasses, the kind of handshake that felt like a threat. Before we begin, Thomas said, setting Dad's confession letter on the table, my clients would like to present voluntary disclosure documentation prepared by the deceased taxpayer. Walsh read Dad's letter with the expression of someone calculating prison sentences. Agent Martinez took notes in a shorthand that looked like she was sketching our financial graves. Mr. Chen's confession is thorough, Walsh said finally. But it raises additional questions about the sophistication of this operation. What operation? Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. My father sent money to help raise his kids. Your father created multiple legal entities, transferred assets across state lines, and coordinated with tax counsel to minimize federal oversight of substantial cash flows. Walsh opened a laptop and turned it toward us. Ms. Torres, were you aware that your college financial aid applications listed David Chen as deceased? The color drained from Jennifer's face. What? Portland State University financial aid records show your father as deceased starting in September 2019. Yet bank records show he was sending you $3,200 monthly through August 2022. Walsh's voice was clinically precise. That's potentially $115,200 in fraudulent financial aid. I grabbed Jennifer's arm as she started shaking. She didn't know. Jennifer, did you ever tell the school Dad died? No, Mike handles all my school paperwork. He said it was easier since he's my legal guardian for FAFSA purposes. Jennifer was staring at the laptop screen like it contained a cancer diagnosis. Mike told them Dad was dead. Agent Martinez consulted her notes. Mr. Torres listed himself as sole guardian on your 2019 FAFSA renewal, with notation that your biological father was deceased. This qualified you for additional Pell Grant funding and Oregon State aid. Thomas was scribbling notes frantically. Agent Martinez, are you suggesting Mr. Torres committed aid fraud independently of the tax violations? I'm suggesting this family has multiple layers of potential federal violations that extend beyond simple tax evasion. My phone buzzed with a text from Mike, asterisk at the office. Jennifer's school called, something about aid fraud investigation. What the hell is happening, asterisk. Another text, asterisk they want me to come in for questioning this afternoon. Should I get a lawyer, asterisk. I showed the messages to Thomas, who closed his eyes like someone had just told him the building was on fire. Prosecutor Walsh, I said, how much trouble is Mike Torres actually in? Federal aid fraud carries a maximum penalty of $20,000 in fines and 5 years imprisonment per violation. If Mr. Torres filed false information for multiple academic years. Walsh shrugged. We're looking at potential sentences that could exceed a decade. Jennifer made a sound like she'd been punched. Mike has 3 kids of his own. If he goes to prison. The room fell silent except for Agent Martinez's pen scratching across her notepad. I thought about Mike at Mom's funeral, standing slightly apart from Jennifer and her siblings, trying to honor a dead woman's wishes while managing a family that had never quite become his own. There's something else, I said quietly. We found evidence that suggests Mike might not have known the full scope of what he was signing. Thomas shot me a warning look, but I was done with partial truths and strategic omissions. Dad had early-stage dementia. We only found the medical records yesterday, but he was diagnosed 18 months before he died. Mike might have been signing documents for someone who was no longer entirely competent to make those decisions. Walsh leaned forward with the interest of a predator detecting wounded prey. Ms. Chen, are you claiming your father lacked mental capacity when he created these financial arrangements? The question hung in the air like a loaded gun pointed at all of us. The question about Dad's mental capacity hung in the air while Walsh consulted with Agent Martinez in whispers that sounded like vultures discussing carrion. I looked at Jennifer, who was gripping the table edge so hard her knuckles had gone white, and realized we'd reached the moment where our family's future would be decided by strangers who didn't understand what love looked like when it got complicated. Prosecutor Walsh, Thomas said carefully, if we can demonstrate diminished capacity, it could mitigate criminal intent for all parties involved. It could also void every financial transaction David Chen made in his final 18 months, Walsh replied. Including the investment accounts you're planning to use for restitution. The trap was perfect. Prove Dad was mentally incompetent to save Mike from prison, but lose the money we needed to pay his debts. Keep the money to clear his obligations, but let Mike face federal fraud charges for following a dying man's confused instructions. Jennifer met my eyes across the table, and I saw the same calculation I was making. Mike Torres had spent 5 years trying to honor Carmen's memory and Dad's promises, never asking for anything except the chance to keep his blended family together. He didn't deserve to go to prison because Dad's brain had been failing while his heart tried to love too many people at once. Agent Martinez, I said, what if we proposed a different kind of resolution? She looked up from her notes with the expression of someone who'd heard every desperate bargain in the book. The investment accounts totaled $340,000. Dad's confession documents $127,000 in tax violations. Mike's potential aid fraud liability is approximately $87,000 based on your calculations. I pulled out my phone and opened the calculator app. That's $214,000 in total federal obligations. We'll pay the full amount, plus an additional $50,000 penalty, in exchange for no criminal charges against any family members. Walsh was already shaking his head. The federal government doesn't negotiate restitution agreements in lieu of prosecution without. There's one more thing, Jennifer interrupted. The Portland house. Dad's medical lien against Carmen's estate. We found out yesterday it's not actually valid. She pulled out a document I hadn't seen before, something she'd apparently been saving for exactly this moment. Carmen Martinez died intestate in Oregon, but she'd been living in Washington for 6 months before her death. Under Washington state law, medical debt doesn't transfer to real estate owned by unmarried partners. Jennifer's voice got stronger. The lien against our house is worth $127,000, but it legally shouldn't exist. We can challenge it in court and probably win. Thomas was staring at her. Jennifer, where did you get this information? I've been taking pre-law classes, remember? And I spent yesterday at the Portland State Law Library instead of packing. She looked directly at Walsh. The house is worth $310,000 clear. If we sell it and add those proceeds to the investment account restitution, we can pay $650,000 to resolve everything. No trials, no prison sentences, no more audits of Mike's family. Agent Martinez was typing rapidly. $650,000 represents approximately 5 times the documented federal losses. That's well within DOJ guidelines for voluntary disclosure settlements. Walsh was quiet for nearly 3 minutes, consulting documents and making calculations that would determine whether our family spent the next decade fighting federal charges or figuring out how to be siblings. Finally, full restitution of $650,000, paid within 90 days. All parties signed cooperation agreements. Mr. Torres submits to financial monitoring for 3 years. Ms. Torres completes her degree and provides annual income verification to ensure legitimate earnings. He looked at both of us. And both Chen properties get sold, with proceeds going directly to federal escrow until all obligations are cleared. I thought about losing my childhood home, about Jennifer losing hers, about starting over with nothing but each other and the complicated inheritance of Dad's love. Deal, I said. Jennifer nodded. Deal. 6 months later, Jennifer and I signed a lease on a duplex in southeast Portland, her family on one side, me on the other, sharing a backyard where Michael Jr. was teaching me to throw a decent curveball while Sarah drew portraits of our expanding definition of family. We'd lost both houses, paid more than $500,000 to the federal government, and spent our father's entire secret fortune cleaning up the beautiful mess he'd made trying to love all of us at once. But we'd kept everyone out of prison, kept the kids in school, and discovered that being sisters was less about shared DNA than about choosing each other every day despite everything that tried to pull us apart. Dad would have been proud of the choice we made. Mom would have been proud that we made it together.